recently BCIT Business and Media, have been a long-term partner of the GCBA, the German Canadian Business Association, and has probably worked with many of the businesses here in the audience. Our hallmark at BCIT Business and Media is the outstanding students we graduate that go on to become business leaders in our community. The School of Business and Media is a leader in providing a practical business school experience for its students, offering over 50 career-oriented credentials at 2 campuses. BCIT values our business partners in the community who recruit our students upon graduation. Our students have real-world skills they put to use right away in your businesses. On behalf of the School of Business at BCIT, I want to thank Beatrice, Elka, and the GCBA for putting on this amazing event. Even though he doesn't need an introduction, finally let me introduce Ozzie Jurock. Ozzie has not only sold, bought, owned, and managed real estate, he also teaches how to invest in it. Ozzie served as past president of Royal LePage and was in charge of over 7,000 salespeople, the past chairman of NRS, Block Brothers, as well as managed real estate companies in Taiwan, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and US. He has served on the boards of the BC Real Estate Council, the Vancouver Real Estate Board, the UBC Real Estate Research Bureau, and the Quality Council of BC, among others. Ozzie is known as one of Canada's leading business and motivators, and his annual Land Rush and Outlook investor conferences attract audiences of over 700 people. Thousands of students have attended his Secrets of Real Estate Investment Action courses. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to introduce Ozzie Jurock.
Okay, thank you very much. With that fine introduction, I'm looking forward to what I have to say myself. Can you put me full screen?
Yeah.
Okay, I only see myself as a little guy in the corner. There I go, pin video. Well, welcome everybody, and I'm very honored to be here. Certainly, Dr. Schmidt, thank you so much for coming. You know, I know you have a huge hectic schedule and to take your time off. Now it's a lot of pressure on me. I have to be interesting. Also, Elke and Claudia and Beatrice, well, Elke and Beatrice in particular, to arrange the event is very thoughtful, and thanks for inviting me. What I want to do is talk a little bit about the real estate market, of course, but also my understanding was that there would be a number of students and whether it still would be the right thing for students to be in the real estate market. So what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about, I'll give you a story. I'll give you a outline on the fear that is pervading the world right now, and then talk briefly about the 7 major reversals we've had in my life in terms of the markets. And then I'll tell you a little bit about what is happening in the market and how you best position yourself, particularly if you're younger, but it really applies to anybody. The story I want to tell you is that you may, yes, I have run corporations with in excess of 10,000 people, 7,000 in sales alone, 3,000 in backup. And the corporations, I sat on a lot of board of directors. And I've seen a lot of different things happen, but I didn't start out that way. In fact, I was sort of a Spund in the wind, Spund im Wind, we would say in Cologne, that I was just, you know, very, very interested in travel, very interested in girls, and not much else. And certainly, when I look at the fine institution I'm speaking at, you know, I would have never in my life would have believed that I actually talking to educated people. Now, one of the things I did was, in fact, I'm publishing a book called Firsts, which means that it's always the first thing you do in life that you remember the most. The first kiss, the first girl, the first boy, the first aeroplane flight, the first cruise. The reason I went to Australia when I was 19 years old was there was a cruise ship. Wow. I mean, I was going to be on a cruise ship, nothing happier. And then as I flew from Melbourne to Launceston, the reason I flew was I was on a plane. Like when I look at my kids for the last 30 years, they've been flying since they were 2 years old. Well, I hadn't been in a plane. So as we landed in Launceston, guess where I went? I went to the local circus. I worked with the circus, Ashton Super Circus in Tasmania. And I arrived there, and remember, I saw myself as a writer. And so I had a typewriter in a big box. These sort of travel typewriters were really more like a suitcase. And I had a suitcase, and because I was playing the clarinet in a Dixieland band, I had the clarinet. So armed well with my friend Peter, we would arrive at the circus, and because they had another German there, no, he wasn't a doctor, but he was Klaus Schmidt. No, not Franz Schmidt. Not sorry. And he introduced us and says, "Look, boys, what is it with this luggage? What are you doing with a?" Well, so I explained to him, "I have a clarinet and I have a typewriter, and you know." But he says, "Where do you think you are? You're in a circus. There's 1,000 people walking in here. You may have a clarinet now, but by tonight they're all gone." But then he took pity on us and said, "Okay, guys, come with me." And we went to where the lions were. Now the lions were in cages, 10 of them, on top of a sort of a big trailer. And they were side by side, connected, and there was little boxes underneath, and that's where we put my stuff. And he says, "Nobody's going to get near the lions." And so then he explained to us that he used to be with Ringling Brothers in New York, and now he was in Australia and in Tasmania, traveling with Ashton Circus. He says, "Boys, I need you in the morning." Sure, I'm very happy. And so we went there in the morning, and we built sort of the enclosure of the ring box inside the big tent. And he backed up the trailer with the lions close to the ring box enclosure. And the lions came in, and then he had a big rope that he threw over the sort of the fence enclosure for, you know, where the lions were inside and we were outside. He said, "Boys, you hang on to the rope." So my friend Peter and I said, "Why are we hanging on to the rope, Franz?" "Well, hang on to the rope and hang tight." So that's what we did. We hang tight, and then the lions were all, in the meantime, had walked around, and all of them were sitting like that, except one lioness named Aiza. And she was really looking at him saying, "Make me," you know, like she was, and being a big animal, a scary kind of a thing. So we were hanging onto the rope. There's the lioness. He walks, so he flicked his whip. Pum, it was sort of a crackling sound, and the other lions went like this, but Aiza, no way. So he went and took the end of the rope was in a loop that he put around the lion's neck, a noose, and his boys, "Hold on tight." What do you mean? What are we doing? Hang on tight. And he took the whip and he smacked the lion. Now this, in today's world where we love animals, this would be unacceptable, but in his world, he hit the lioness. The lioness took a flying leap at him, like this, and then Peter and I, we were lifted up from our seats up the enclosure, and then as she got caught by the noose and fell back, we fell back down, and we were screaming together with everybody that was watching, "What are you doing?" However, it worked. The lioness sat like this, and he got all of them doing some exercise. He moved them back on the truck, and I said to him, "Franz, what are you doing? I mean, you have to tell us these things. Are you crazy?" Well, I said, "That's fine, don't worry about it." And he walked away, and beside us stood the director, and I said to him, "He hit the lion. Isn't he worried that they're going to eat him?" He said, "No. He says, "The big problem is going to be tonight." I said, "What tonight?" "But tonight is going to put his head into that lion's head." "What?" Now we're sitting on the edge of our seat. The 3,000 people in the tent, they have no idea what's going on. You know, there's elephants and horses, and finally they're the lions, and we're watching. And he has them all going through the hoops. You know, one is jumping through a ring of fire, and the other. And then finally, the coup de grace, the final event, is Aiza sitting there and sort of, you know, sitting there like this. And he goes up to her really close, and she opens her big mouth, and he puts his head in it, and he backs out, and he goes away. Well, we were stunned. And I mean, I'm still having shivers on my spine from when I remember that. And so that night, we couldn't talk to him because we had to take down the tent and move everything into the next city. But the next day, he says, "Okay, you were kind of asking me about whether I was scared." And he says, "Absolutely not. You cannot fear. You cannot have any doubt, because in an animal, 20 feet away, they smell it. They smell your fear, they feel your unhappiness, they worry about you. If you don't have the right attitude." And he says, "By the way, humans are the same way." I said, "What do you mean?" Well, he says, when you have doubt about who you are and what you want to do and what you want to create in your life, everybody smells it. He says, you know, the people I can look around and walk and look at all the performers. When you see our guy hanging in the air in the trapeze, and on his feet he hangs there, and in his mouth he has a contraption on which two women twirl. If they had any slight doubt that this would work, they would fall down. You have to, though, in everything you do, you have to be no doubt. And in Germany, of course, is, you know, du kannst einfach nicht zweifelhaft sein. You can't have any Zweifel. No doubts. Well, okay, then what does that have to do with real estate? Well, it has been guiding me for all my life, because when you take a look at the different things that happen to us, let me just get this. The whole idea of being doubtful in this crazy world is really kind of strange, because think about it. Out of 7,594 billion people in the whole world, there's only one you. I mean, we gotta love that you, right? You gotta love yourself. You look in the mirror and say, hey man, this is it. This is who I am. And must not have any doubts that you are not the answer to anybody's problem, certainly your own. And yet you're so doubtful all the time. When I talk to people, half the time that, oh, it's the end of the world now, and this terrible thing is going to happen, or that terrible thing is going to happen, it's going to be awful. And I'm not surprised that we have a doubtful kind of a world, but don't doubt yourself, don't doubt your ability to learn and grow. I learned from being a tent hand, becoming a maitre d' in a restaurant, one of the finest restaurants in Vancouver, to running very large corporations. I learned it all because I started to believe that I can't have any doubt, because 1% doubt and you're out. You can grow into your future best self. Well, in this kind of a world, doubt is very simple. We have confusion, elections, liquidity crisis, credit crunch, solvency bubble. Brexit has still not been solved and probably won't be. We have Trump election, we have inflation, rising dollars. Help, no doubt, we have doubt. And yet, when you take a look at the previous events that we had great fears in 1975 and 1987, 1990, all of these events had major problems, and the headlines were full of the end of the world. In 1975, the headline was, realtors are prowling like hungry tigers, you know, and the price was 54,000. And in 1987, we had a huge stock market crash. I was, like I said, in charge in Toronto, a very large corporation, and the company was owned by Trilon, and they owned London Life, they owned Royal LePage, and they owned Royal Trust, and they owned, you know, really very heavy corporations. And we hired the best advice money could buy. We spent $80,000 for people to tell us that we were going to hell in a handbasket. I laid off 1,000 people on our staff, and within 7 months, it was very clear that we did not have had to lay them off. In fact, we almost went back to normal. In fact, commercial real estate became only interesting after the stock market crash, when pension funds realized they needed an income stream, and the stock market could go down. And so right now, what we went from 2% of a pension funds portfolio to now almost 7-8%, which is in real estate. The point was, in 1990, the average interest rate was 13.5% for a 5-year term. In 1998, we had a Russian crisis, an Asian crisis, we had a Mexican crisis, we had crises. We had 2001, of course. And in 2008, we had, of course, the biggest economic crisis. And the history is real estate soared through all of them. Had you bought a house, any house, not particularly brainy exercise, you bought it in a rotten area in Vancouver on the east side and downtown and whatever, you would have outperformed any stock market, you would have outperformed any other kind of investment. As I said, the 16 to 21% interest rate in 1981, how could you survive that? It was mind-boggling, also the bankruptcies we had at the time. The whole idea of the savings and loan crisis is hardly ever talked about, but in 1989 to 1992, 1,100 banks closed in the United States. Now, they were called savings and loans, much like our credit unions, but they were banks. And I purchased a company on behalf of the company I was working for, called Red Carpet, and was working with a corporation called the Resolution Trust Company. The United States at that time took all the bad loans of the banks, called them non-performing assets, threw them into the Resolution Trust Company, and the banks had to divest themselves of non-core assets. And I flew to Chicago in the middle of the night with the fellow that was in charge of the sales. I purchased this corporation, a $10 million corporation, for $600,000. So I'm going to come back to that sometimes in the darkest times, there's also the greatest opportunity. And so here we go. Now it is 2020 and 2021, and we look at the past and see what happens. The biggest crisis we had a Wall Street crash in 29, it was a 33% decline. We had all of these kind of things, and then we come to March 12, 2020, it was 21%. In fact, you can go and extrapolate it and make it more, but the point is we have been there before. So when you have that doubt grabbing you by the throat and saying, well, this time I cannot act, I can't move, I can't do anything, I couldn't afford it, I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm too fat, I'm too small. The doubt is the only thing that's your problem, because history is on your side. Within 2 years after every major crisis, the Dow Jones average, including after 9/11, when the Dow Jones closed for 4 solid days, and again the whole world was talking about it's over. Yeah, we are now in a world that we'll never recover from, and yet 2 years later, the Dow was up 25%. Some of the stock market breaks in the oil crisis, Grenada, the bombing of Libya, and all of them had recovered within 2 years, dramatically so. And so when we talk about the big crisis of 2007, 2009, I personally believed firmly that the nonsense we were talking about, that the US was going to go bankrupt. See, the United States has a $19 trillion economy. It's not a question how much money you owe, it's how much money you can service. And I won't go into many details there, but I firmly believe the US would do well. And my partners and I went and spent a lot of time in the United States buying condos that had sold for $200,000 for as low as $40,000. So inside the biggest unhappiness, there's always that opportunity. Yeah, but Ozzie, this is a pandemic. It's not the same thing. What are you talking about? Well, in 1918, we had 50 million deaths worldwide, 75,000 in the US. In 1957, globally, 116,000 people in the United States died. The swine flu, H2 and N2, we had 1.1 million deaths in 1970. We had the H1N1 pandemic in 2009 again. Then there was SARS. Then there was Ebola. In fact, I was in Asia when SARS was a big deal. The point is, it's not the same thing. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. Oh, by the way, not be easy. I say it's manageable. I bet on optimism. I believe that we will muddle through, just like we have muddled through before. Those of you that know me for a while, I've been writing a newsletter since 1993. And some of those crises happened right during that time that I was writing the newsletter. I would tell people, buy a condo downtown on Hornbush Street for $110,000, and nobody would buy it, because we couldn't understand it. We said 2 years ago, buy Wally. Wally, are you kidding me? It's a terrible place. Well, Yaletown used to be a place that was a terrible place. Yaletown, you never wanted to go near because it was in the dark of the night, you might get robbed. Or Mount Pleasant, you wouldn't buy a house there, would you? And today, these areas change. So things change, and things actually get better. And actually in a crisis, we are forced to learn more and faster. And this is the same now. I mean, I firmly believe, and I've written it in my OZZBuzz, OZBUZZ.com is my blog. We have 22,000 subscribers. I have some 30,000 followers on the various social media accounts. And I'm telling everybody, I'm saying, you know, we will get through this, but we will be different. It won't be the same. It's not looking in the rearview mirror. It's going to be the same just because we had tough times then. I think in 5 years, we won't have any cash anymore that we're using. So the world's changing. And if you're a millennial, hey, fabulous. You have an incredible opportunity to be part of this incredible change that is going to happen. Now, if you look at real estate, you know, it looked, different people see it different ways. I mean, as the house that you see, this is your house, this is how you see it. Now, this is your buyer sees this house. And then this one is your appraiser sees it. And then this one, your lender sees it. You know, particularly right now, I mean, lenders, my God, you know. And this is your BC tax assessments. That's how they see it, right? So this is how we always look at different kind of real estate. The point is this: why real estate? You know, we can argue till we're blue in the face, but I have some basic philosophy. It is a sort of a layman's kind of economics. But first of all, it's a physical asset. It is local in nature. You can control it. Real estate is all local, so it can understand local conditions and make an intelligent decision. And you can control it. And history is on your side. In 1977, I don't know, can you see my my little, can you see it? Okay, down in the far left-hand corner, 1977, the average house was about 75,000. It turned out to be 1.8 million in 2016. We're now at 1.7 million. We had a relentless climb and an unbelievable climb of values. Now, but we didn't go there in a straight line. There was 2008, 2009, and then we had all of these kind of disasters I talked before. We went through, and had you bought a house at any one of those big dips, on a condo or whatever, you'd have done very, very well from January 1997 to 2016. Well, the other thing, of course, is if you go back further. I mean, my first house was $13,500. $13,500. If somebody would have told me that that's going to be worth $27,000, I would have said, "What are you smoking? Are you kidding me?" Yeah. Yet, had you purchased a house in 1980 for $100,000 and put $5,000 down, and in 2012 that house was worth $1.1 million, that was a 21,878% return on your down payment. Remember, people always talk about the full price, but you as an investor or a small-time investor, a small guy, small girl, a small couple can, through leverage, increase their wealth dramatically. Because here, that $5,000, and you did nothing else, just bought that house and stayed there. In fact, that $13,400 house, which I bought on Victoria Drive, is now for sale at $1.4 million. I mean, if somebody had told me that, then, you know, I mean, clearly you think they're crazy. But I'm just saying, this is 2012. In 2012, it was 1,100,000. So we had this enormous increase. And yet, from there, we went up another $700,000. And throughout that period, I cannot tell you how many speeches I did, how many events we did, how many newsletters I wrote, on the radio every Saturday morning, 26 years on the radio, I never wavered once. I felt that building wealth through investment in real estate, particularly when you're young, and looking at it as an investment over time, will be better than any other type of investment, because you don't have $100,000 at that time, cash. People saying you should put that in gold. Well, you don't have 100,000, you had 5. And that 5 got you to be a wealthy man. This whole idea, this love affair we have with gold right now, $100,000 worth of gold in 1980, the same time, as I said here, that you bought that $100,000 Vancouver house, that $100,000 in gold was $800 an ounce. It then went down and up and down and up and down and never went back to $800 until 2007. It took 27 years for the gold bugs just to get their money back, and they still are believers. Now, of course, today gold hits $1,900, which is about the 2 for 1, so it's maybe 2.5 times of what it was over 35 years. Are you kidding me? That is the big investment. That $100,000 house in 1980 is now worth $1.7 million. I mean, there's just absolutely no comparison, because it's a dead thing, apart from the fact you have to pay storage for gold and so on. But of course, I'm biased. Okay, so I said it's a physical asset. It's local in nature. You can control the outcome if you do a little learning, if you do a little thinking about it, because you can assign it, you can mortgage it, you can rent it out to somebody else and get income. You can lend on it. You can go stuff on it. I wrote a story for the Vancouver Sun, and I wrote that, and a lady complained to the editor that I said you can grow tomatoes on it, and she felt tomatoes was a secret word for pot. But anyways, yeah, you could grow that there as well. But most importantly, you can leverage it through a lower down payment. It's an investment of that personal outcome. That gold, for instance, 6 old guys sit in Hong Kong and decide to sell gold and drive the gold price lower. And you, by the time you get to the office in the morning, it's already happened. You have no control. In real estate, you can affect it through understanding the concept of timing, the concept of trend, and the trend that we're in right now. I'm going to talk about that, study the cycle, and the value that you can add. We build apartment buildings constantly that we fixed up and added value through renovations and so on. Now, in the United States, you can defer capital gain forever, because you buy another property, you can transfer the capital gain, and you can write off interest against income. In Canada, you can defer your capital gain as an investor for up to 5 years. And of course, in Canada, you also have the only tax-free, so far, the only tax-free capital gain that you can have in almost in the Western world. that on your house, you can make a profit and get it tax-free. Now, by the way, if you go to my YouTube channel, I made a strong story on it, and I'm absolutely convinced that UBC was instructed by CBC to study on how to do away that exemption. But that is another time and another story, as we will have to have a lot of new taxes, and the government already said it'd be a $6 billion hit. How they arrive at that, we leave that for another time. The big thing is leverage. As I said, your cash investment may be 5% as an owner or 25%. Minimum from an investment perspective is 20%. It then can produce an income. But most important is mortgage reduction. For instance, if you bought a $300,000, you had a $300,000 mortgage, and even if it was 3%, I can get you today a mortgage at 1.8%. I can get you an industrial commercial mortgage over 10 years for 1.3%. But let's say it was 3%. The payment on a 3%, on a $300,000 mortgage at 3% is about $1,400, of which $700 is a deduction, an increase in equity. So if you just had a $330,000 purchase, put down 30%, after 5 years, you paid off $60,000. That is part of the additional thing. We're not even talking about it having gone up in value. Just that is a benefit, a bonus, a capital gain if it does happen. And of course, it has happened. And so the question is, do I want to get rich slowly? Is there such a thing as slow motion wealth building? Yes. And particularly after you're sort of 23 years old and that you're young, or anywhere younger than I am. Because if you did nothing but buy a small condo, now this speech, this part of the speech I've made for 25 years. Go buy a small condo in a small town, a good town, say a Kamloops, where there's golf courses, there's skiing, there's employment, you know, there's people going to work, you know, there's a Costco. We used to have actually the Costco index. Wherever they're open, that's where you wanted to buy real estate. The point is you buy something for $80,000 and you persuade your long-suffering mother to give you $5,000 down or some down payment, or you save it yourself, or you use your credit card, and then you rent it out for about $800 a month. You paid $80,000. In today's interest rate, that will pay your mortgage off in 17 years, not 25, in 17 years, pay the starter fees and the taxes. By the time you hit 40, it's paid off, and you now have $800 for the rest of your life. That's assuming there's no inflation. It never went up. The rent never went up. Nothing happened. It just stayed the same way. But at 40, you have $800 a month for the rest of your life. Now, imagine you did it 5 times. Now, at age 40, you have $4,000 for the rest of your life. Now, $4,000 right now borrows you, or somebody will lend you with that kind of an income, $1 million. You're a true blue millionaire, not yet billionaire. And the key is this, that you did it slowly. It was actually the tenant that paid off the mortgage for you and paid off all the costs relating to it. Now, would you have had a problem? Do you have to learn some property management? Yes. Is somebody going to run away with the TV set? Probably. But the thing is, once you learn how to operate it and do it, it's a better investment than any other. We talked last night, one of our speakers was in Ontario, and he likes to buy at the edge of town, say at the edge of Niagara Falls and some small towns. And he, just 6 months ago, right in the middle of the pandemic, he purchased a $300,000 house. You know, this is a different world than here in Vancouver. And the income was $1,700. And he figured out that with that income, he could cover all costs. He did not count for the capital gain. In 6 months, it's already up $50,000. So he actually could have gone with a down payment of some 10% and made 110% on his money in 6 months. Okay, you say, well, is that going to continue? Well, let's talk about that. But clearly, based on history, everybody should have bought a condo every 5 years. Imagine that you had. And in our club, that's what we have. For 20 years, our club has been buying out real estate. And our top gal that started is Janet LePage. And if you go to OZZIE'S.ca and listen to my podcast, the #1 podcast is with Janet. She's a gal from Creston, BC, educated, but while she had 2 children, in 7 years, she accumulated, wait for it, 13,000 condominiums and became the 2nd largest condo owner in the city of Phoenix. Now, can everybody do that? Maybe not, but can everybody get 100 units? Yeah, absolutely. But she had, do you think she had any doubts about herself, about her future, about the United States or Phoenix or the groups? And the whole idea is that once you start thinking, hey, just a minute, I'm all there is, right? I mean, beautiful package, but I'm maybe too fat, too small, too short. Well, it doesn't matter. If I believe in a future based on a reality of actually what I can study, like the history of real estate in British Columbia. Now, I mean, when I say condos, don't want you to buy these kind of condos, okay? This condo tower is really not, don't do this. I don't know who put this together, but maybe just a montage. Anyhow, so the basic principles. By the way, I was told to be 45 minutes to an hour, and that's where I'm going to be exactly. So if I hopefully do not overtake my time. But anyhow, the whole idea that what you have to study, I don't care what age you are, or whether you agree with me, or whether you think the end of the world is just about to happen. This slide I've been showing for 15 years. I was on BC TV every Wednesday at noon for almost just under 18 years. By the way, you can still see that on my YouTube channel under the blast from the past. I left them all there. So you can see I said the same thing then that I'm saying now. It's not that I all of a sudden made a big change in my world. But if you understand from an overall perspective, what environment are we in? Inflation or deflation? What is the timing? What's the trend and what are the cycles? And then, of course, locally, what immigration are we having? What's the affordability, the demand and supply, the interest rate taxes, and always remember the principles. You make the most money on the day you buy. That actually applies to everything. But the key is this, that I can't go through them all. It's too long. But I did write about them at length in my OZZIE'S. Remember, OZZIE'S is free. I'm not trying to sell you anything, but at OZZIE'S.ca, issue 39 to 42, I look at each one of those items in great detail. And if you buy into that concept, you'll understand why I believe what I believe. So the key is this, inflation or deflation. That to me is the number one question. If you believe that deflation is the outcome, get into cash, go out into the bush, with your dried food and your machine gun and your gold. Of course, people don't realize they go to the bush with a whole bunch of gold. If I have a gun, you will no longer have any gold, but that's another story. So I have held, the Jurock listed insider has held a multi-year position. This slide is 19 years old, that hard assets are inflating worldwide. And I'm with Milton Friedman, who, by the way, is the architect behind the floating Canadian dollar, but that's again another story. But inflation is primarily a monetary phenomenon. Now, you can argue till you're blue in the face. That's what I believe. And in my book, Forget About Location, 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 which I wrote in 1998, the average price was $278,000. Now, I wrote that if we kept on printing money or creating money out of thin air for the next 35 years, and we did to 35 years leading up to 1998, then every house in Vancouver would be worth $5 million. Well, we actually hit 4.4 million on the west side last year. When I said that in 1998, by the way, the NDP was in power then too, people thought that I was nuts. And I called the Vancouverites the yeah-butters. Like we always, everybody's saying yeah, but. You say, go into a room, say, nice day. Somebody says, oh, but tomorrow is going to rain. And I made the point that we had 100 reasons, from a new movie industry to tourism and whatnot, why Vancouver would be one of the premier spots in the world. Anyways, I've written a number of books. And in each one of those books, whether they're printed in 2001, 2009, 2013, I was even featured in Mr. Trump's, the President of the United States, in 2009, long before he was president, created this book, The Top 100 Experts, and I'm the only Canadian and I'm the only German that he picked to write a whole chapter in that book, and I'm quite proud of it. But the point I'm making, the same thing I'm telling you now, I told then, and that's in his book in 2009. And so the idea is this, that we are being told that there is inflation, and they're worried about this 2% target. And we don't know what they're calling it, actually. There's a headline inflation, a core inflation, demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, open inflation, repressed inflation, hyperinflation, creeping and moderate inflation, semi-inflation, true inflation. Give me a break. All it's supposed to be 2%. Nothing that you and I buy to live and eat is only going up 2%. Nothing. Everything is more expensive. Your parking is 10 times more expensive than 2%. Had you started 2% 20 years ago. Government services, swimming pools, parks, food, rents going up 2% a year. Your costs of real estate going up 2% a year. Just forget it. Core headline inflation What we have is a dramatic cost price inflation nobody talks about. The poor guy earns $45,000 a year. He can barely make ends meet. Doesn't know how it happened, but his costs have gone up dramatically. He goes to his boss. He says, I need a raise. And the boss says, here's 2%. The government says that's inflation. And so he goes, and his 2% does nothing for him. So, okay, Ozzie, well, what's it going to be? Inflation or deflation? Don't worry, I'm not spending too much time on it more. But to me, the interesting thing is that we have both. And we have an inflation in hard assets already for 30 years worldwide. And we have a deflation in commodities. And inflation in hard assets is a monetary event, directly relates to how much money we create. And that money competes with the money you and I earn. And deflation is an economic event. So for instance, from 2015 to 2018, our prices in Vancouver went up a whopping 25% in real estate. Painting sold for $400 million. All the hard assets in the world soared. Deflation, on the other hand, settles in the commodity sector, because if the Chinese government buys fewer of our natural resources because they sell fewer cars or whatever, then we can be in outright deflation in the commodities areas, and that's an economic event. Okay, what's it mean to you and me? If you're interested in real estate, this is where I'm banking on, that inflation in hard assets has continued and will continue. It will mean maybe it's just a debasement of the currency. When I came here, 4 German marks bought me $1. Right now, the euro is worth more than our Canadian dollars. And the point is, so don't doubt yourself. Don't doubt your ability to learn. Don't doubt for a moment that we can adapt to a changing world, and never doubt your ability to grow into your future best self. Because remember, 1% doubt and you're out. I won't go into any other things, but you can read up on them. Now, there's no help from developers. They tear down all the trees and then call the streets Elm Avenue and First Street. Right? So developers are no help, and the economists are no help. All economists really wanted to be accountants, but just don't have the personality. But maybe that's not fair for them. Economists know 100 ways to seduce a woman, but they don't know any women. Right? No, okay. Old joke, but still true, right? Now, let me just switch gears and say, all right, if I buy this, that real estate has been good, is this not just a Vancouver phenomena? I've had the privilege of taking my family in the last 4 years on trips around the world, everywhere. We were in Cologne, Germany. We were in Berlin. We were in London several times. We were in Barcelona last year. We were in Abu Dhabi. We were in Dubai, Kuala Lumpur, Manila. I'm not saying this because I'm trying to brag. I'm just telling you that prices in all of these areas were soaring. In fact, Manila, I wrote it in my newsletter in OZZIE'S in August last year, or July last year. And I said, buy Manila. And yeah, now it's up 17% in 1 year. And so when you take a look at that, really sort of certifies my argument. We're printing money like mad. I lived in Australia, as I mentioned to you, and the place I stayed in was 17,000 pounds. When I was there, it was still pounds. And today that same place is worth $1.6 million. So it happened there. It's not just a specialized Vancouver event. All right. So